Good evening. Welcome to Love Talk. This is Gregory Morgan. You have a future. Now, that future is not written in stone. That future is not fixed. That is called fate, okay? Fate is what you run into if you don't design and create a future for yourself. There is a default, almost always certain to happen, predictable outcome to your life. If you just continue in the direction that it's already going, you will end up wherever you're heading, okay? And sure, there will be surprises and twists and turns, but for the most part, your life, unless you take charge of it, has a predictable, almost certain outcome. And for many of you, that doesn't sound so great. For many of you, you've looked out into the future, and the future that you see out ahead of you, it doesn't excite you, it doesn't turn you on, it doesn't light you up, it doesn't make you feel great about yourself or excited to get up in the morning. In fact, you just keep moving forward because you don't know what else to do. So at Embrace Growth, we're talking about consistent, persistent, constantly self-improving, self-developing, self-actualizing growth. And that kind of growth can be very uncomfortable. Why? Because it happens outside of your comfort zone. Inside of your comfort zone is your predictable, almost certain future that's about to happen anyhow. If you don't create your own future, there's a future that will happen to you. I call that future your fate. You know, people ask me, is our future written in stone? Is our future predicted? Is it set? No. It is not. There is no future out ahead of you except the future that you create. Now, when do you create that future? You create that future every minute of your life. You're creating the future now. In fact, it could be said accurately that you are currently, right now in this moment, if you look around at your home, your clothing, your financial income, the relationships in your life, the state of your health, you are currently living in a future that you have created in the past. The future, the present moment that you have now is a result of the actions or inactions, the decisions or indecisions, the choices or lack of choices that you have made throughout the history of your life so far. You've ended up where your actions, your present physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state is a direct result of the actions that you've taken in the world. And of course, by that I mean the inactions as well. Sitting around doing nothing, that's an action. Thinking about something but not doing anything about it, that's an action. Talking about doing something but then doing something else, that's also an action. That's two different actions. They don't really produce any satisfying results. So you will have, and you already do have, either the results that you said you were going to produce, or you have a story about why that didn't happen. You either have the results or the story. You have the results or you have an excuse. You have results or you have a reason why you don't have those results. Now, that is all just to sort of set the stage for, if you will, or to preempt what it is that I wanted to speak with you about today. And I want to share this with you and have a dialogue with you. My greatest interest is not just to share my thoughts with you, which, may or may not be interesting to you, but where I feel that these thoughts will have the most impact and the most powerful results in your life, because they've had tremendous results in my own. I've produced miraculous things in my life. Now, to me, they weren't miracles. They were the results of actions that I'd taken. Sometimes the outcomes were surprising. Sometimes they were 100 times better than I ever expected, but sometimes they were 100 times worse, you see. So, right action is important. Consistent action is important. All of those things point in a particular direction, and that's the direction that I want to speak in today, about the importance of integrity and what I'm going to call ruthless compassion. Now, ruthless, that sounds like bad, right? That sounds hard. Call it tough love if that sounds better to you, if that's more digestible, you see. But ruthlessness means that you will do whatever it takes, whether you or anybody else likes it or not, to produce an honorable result, a compassionate result, a result driven by passion. You see, there's ruthlessness that's driven by revenge. We're not talking about that. And that's why most people, when they think of ruthlessness, or when I say the word ruthless, they think of somebody who's fierce, mean, heartless, callous, hard-hearted, that wants to cause harm or mischief in some way. I'm not talking about that form or that motivation for ruthlessness. I'm talking about ruthless compassion. I'm talking about compassion-driven ruthlessness. Okay? Another nicer way to say that is unreasonableness, being unreasonable, being detached from how people might think of you, feel about what the actions you're taking, whether they like it or not. It's not a popularity contest. It is, do you have the compassion and the love in your heart to do what is necessary for the outcome of the greatest good for all concerned? And when I say all concerned, I mean humanity itself. I don't just mean you and your friends. I don't mean just you and your little social group or your political party or your nation. I'm talking about you and the rest of humanity. Can you aim your actions? Can you aim your future? Can you aim the heartfelt love in your heart towards something that will have the greatest good for all concerned? Who's all concerned? Yeah, okay, there's some things that maybe not everybody's concerned about, but then when I say all concerned, I mean all concerned with the decision or choice that you have to make right now in the moment about any conflict or challenge that you may be facing in your life. Now, if you've listened to me so far, you already know that you have challenges and conflicts in your life, yes? Maybe they're at work, maybe you have challenges and conflicts with your weight, or with your finances, or with somebody that you love. Or maybe you have challenges and conflicts with an organization that you're working with. Maybe you seem to have come at cross purposes with the leadership or the community of that organization. And so sometimes you need to make choices. And those choices are sometimes bitter, you see. They're not always sweet. Sometimes we have to make choices in our life. And I'm looking to share with you a pathway in which you can begin to make the choices that will have the greatest good for all concerned, and that you will get the habit, if you will, the habit of listening to your heart. Because the heart has wisdom, the heart has knowledge, the heart has unseen resources that are sensed and felt and give rise to a deeper level of wisdom or inner knowledge. Knowledge is just knowledge. Knowledge is accumulation of data, important to have, but not necessarily going to change the world. If knowledge could change the world and make the world a better place, well, okay, in many ways that it has. But then look at the state of the world today. We're in the biggest crisis at virtually just about everywhere on the whole planet. There are still a few islands of peace and quiet where things are going well. But for the most part, what you hear about are the conflicts and the pain and the suffering that's being caused in the world. So I would assert that what is driving that is not compassion, but ruthlessness. Yes, ruthlessness, greed, so forth, are driving most of our relationships politically, financially. And so I'm interested in this conversation in getting to the heart, the compassionate part of integrity. And to get to the compassionate part of integrity requires a certain toughness sometimes that I'm going to call ruthless. Ruthless because it detaches itself and is not concerned with others' opinions. And so that requires a kind of impartiality. And impartiality is nice to talk about. We talk about impartiality in the justice system, for example. It's impartiality is an essential component of integrity. Impartiality is the absence of any kind of partiality, if you will, or discrimination for or against any particular person, ethnic group, or group of people. So Impartiality means that you're not partial towards something or away from it. You're simply neutral or impartial towards groups or people in making your choices and decisions. Now, most people value integrity as a virtue. However, in our personal relationships, we are not impartial, are we? In fact, our partiality towards a particular person or a group that is enhanced by our communication and our communion and our relationship with them, we feel safe with them. We provide a certain safety and belonging to them and receive that from them. There's a great deal of affection and exchange of goodwill. So we find it almost impossible in our personal relationships to be impartial, to be disconnected. In fact, that would seem to be the opposite of being related, yes? However, in public life, by public life, maybe you are the leader in a company, maybe you are a manager at your job. If you are a parent, you're a leader in your home, hopefully. Otherwise, your kids are leading the home. This isn't going to turn out well. If you're a teacher of any kind, you're a leader. You're leading younger minds into a more expanded awareness, hopefully, not just teaching them some dogmatic, systematic thing that you memorized, but something that actually improves lives and makes a difference. That's what I mean by a teacher. I don't mean somebody that just like teaches somebody else's thinking by rote because they memorized it and got a job. I'm not talking about that. To me, that is not a teacher. That's a functionary that's just passing on knowledge that they've never personally digested. Sorry, but I don't have a lot of respect for that. I do respect someone who has done their own original thinking and who has gone out and looked at other thinkers in that arena and digested their thoughts so as to enhance their own, and then taught their own synthesis and from their own real understanding and grasping of certain principles. That I call a teacher. And if you're one of those people, then you have a public life. And there has to be a differentiation between your public life and your private life. And in public life, impartiality requires a sort of ruthless disregard for your relationships with any particular person or group. And again, I'm using this word ruthless. It means that you may have your favorites. If you're a parent, you probably have a favorite. If you're a teacher, you probably have a favorite. Yes? So you can't help as a human being preferring one thing or person or group over another. That's natural. However, when you step into the public eye of leadership, you must have a disregard for that and teach everyone equally and share and treat each person with equanimity or equalness. Yes? So, but in private life, in our personal relationships, we have preferences, we do have partialities, and they form the basis for our feelings of safety and trust and confidence and connection. We feel safe with certain people and not so safe with others. We trust some more than others for reasons that maybe we don't ever bother to examine. We just feel more trustworthy. Maybe they have earned that trust through their actions over time. This trust and confidence and belonging enhance our own feelings of well-being. Our own personal confidence or self-esteem is very often based on who we're known to be as, who we're accepted as. Because we have this group or family of people around us, we feel better about ourselves. We feel more confident because we know somebody's got our back. We know that others will support what we say and catch us if we fall, or if we make a mistake, they'll forgive us. So it gives us the courage to stand up and go out and explore on our own, and yet that same group that holds you, that has your back, will often limit you in your thinking. It will often hold you back because they like having you how you are. And if you were to expand outside of the thinking of that group, they will either follow you or they will resist you. They'll try to hold you back, or they will criticize you, or they will say, whatever you say, keep going. We're there for you. Or maybe we don't follow you, but we support you in your exploration. There's many options, you see, but some of the options, more often than not, are when a person finds that safety and confidence and belonging in a group, then their life and their projects and their resources and their thinking and their love and their compassion and all of time spent is around enhancing that group. Now, I don't say that there's anything wrong with that. I say it's limited. It is a limited view, and if that is where you are in your evolution in life, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying and pointing out that that type of group thinking can have a limitation on one's personal self-development. I'm saying this from my own experience, not only as having been parts of groups. I was part of a spiritual group that was based on meditation and being vegetarian and expanded consciousness. And I belonged in that group for a long time. And then as that group went on and on, it became all about everybody in that group we're okay with, but everybody outside that group is somehow we're not okay. And I began to notice that it wasn't okay to have a girlfriend or somebody that was outside the group because they weren't part of the group. And then I began to notice that if you wanted to go study with some other teacher or learn something from somebody else, that wasn't okay either. And then I began to realize that I was part of this group, which was about expanding, was actually attempting to hold me back. And in fact, they could be very even upset about it. All right. And I began to realize that this group had become a cult. And it was only about this one teacher and what he had to say and his way of life. And while that was a fine way of life for a lot of people, I knew, because I'd already traveled around the world and learned a lot of things, that he was one of thousands of teachers that had something that I could learn from. And that while I was grateful for his teaching, I had grown past what he had to teach, and it was time for me to move on. Now, as I look back on it many years later, I realized that it took a sort of ruthlessness for me to break out of that group. People said very endearing and heartfelt and tearful things to me. And at the same time, they said some awful and insulting things to me. And at one point, I just had to simply cut the line and say, do not contact me or call me or email me in any way. I had to ruthlessly cut myself off. And thank God I did, because I've grown and exponentially. Now, the teachings of this man, which seemed like, he was so above me, if you will, at that time in my life, when in my 20s, it seems so sophomoric and childish compared to what I've learned by moving on, you see. So I'm saying that even though and many of those people who are now in their 50s, some of them in their 60s, some of them have grown old and died already, of this group of people that I was around in my 20s, some of them are still living in that same communal, enclosed way. And when I look at them, it's like they haven't grown past mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They're like stunted in their growth. It's just like they could not make it outside of that group. And many people left that group after I did years later, and they never became super successful. They never moved on beyond something. They stayed too long. So it takes a great deal of humility and compassion, an internal ruthlessness, if you will, an internal ability to cut off and detach from what is inappropriate if it becomes true for you that is no longer appropriate. If you see in your own truth, in your own heart, what is going to be the greatest good for all concerned. My interest in growth and development has always, it may have began with myself, but it very soon into my growth and development, it became about how can I be of service to others? How can I serve others as my teachers and masters have served me? How could I be of the greatest good to all concerned, regardless of their race or religion or ethnic group or gender? How can I serve humanity? And what do I need to do? What do I need to ruthlessly detach from in my own life? I've left many people, things, and situations in my own life where at the time it seemed like, wow, that was a cold, hard, tough decision to make, And, some people, it has taken them years to finally see that, hey, I did the right thing. And some never will. They'll probably waste their life hating me or being angry at me for some reason because I didn't stick around and do what they wanted me to do. But I chose a long time ago to live my life for the greater good. And I'm proposing that you take this on. Now, doesn't mean that you need to go, teach seminars and workshops and TV shows and do all those kinds of things like I do or like we do. I don't think that's for everybody. In fact, I don't recommend it. Okay. However, there are people in your life who look up to you. You may think that, well, I'm just one person. What could I do? I'm just me. What have I got that could make the world a better place? You may have thoughts like that, but I guarantee you that there is somebody in the world that may be looking up to you, and for them, you might be the whole world. You might be the one that is going to come along and say the right thing and do the right thing that's going to light their fire and turn them on and ignite or motivate them to be greater than they ever thought that they could be. Some of my greatest teachers were people who I've met for maybe a few moments or an hour or even 5 minutes that said something that made me think, and I was like, wow. And sometimes somebody says something, or you might say something to somebody that would actually change their point of view about who they are in the world and their place in the world. And so it's an opportunity, not an obligation. It's an opportunity, not an obligation, to be a leader in the world, to be a leader in your family, to be a leader in your relationships, to be a leader in a group of people. If you're in a group of people and you find that they're arguing or gossiping or disempowering somebody, why don't you stand up? Why don't you say something that would make a difference and turn the thing around? I think that people get more attached to feeling like they belong, to feeling like they don't want to rock the boat, to not wanting to be unpopular or ill thought of or confrontational. And consequently, I believe that we've become a nation, a world, if you will, a culture of weak people who are more interested in just sort of getting by, good enough, being safe, not challenging the thinking of the day, going along with, trying to be popular. In other words, totally self-concerned. All of that stuff is about you, your comfort, your safety, your getting by, and has nothing to do with causing anything or creating anything or generating something that would actually make a difference in the world out into the future. And then giving you, the great benefit for you is that it gives you a future that is worth using your life up for. You have a certain amount of time and a certain amount of health, a certain amount of money, a certain amount of intelligence, a certain amount of well-being, and you could just, amuse yourself for the rest of your life and, get by and, not rock the boat. And, you probably have a pretty good life. Every time you look in the refrigerator, there'll be some kind of something to eat. When you go out to your car, there'll be some gas in it. When you turn on the TV, there'll be some movies to watch. When you go in your closet, there'll be some clothes. On Saturday night, when you want to get together with some friends, there'll be somebody to call, maybe, or not. In other words, you'll get by. Your life will be just fine. You'll work and they'll give you some kind of paycheck and you can take some money to the bank. And so, if you want to buy something, you can buy it, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm not interested in a life of getting by. In fact, I think that's kind of a walking death. And it concerns me that so much of the world is doing just that. They're just sort of all getting by, going, getting to the next day, getting through the day, hoping tomorrow's going to be okay. If you ask them, how was your day? I mean, like, really, how was your day? They'll say, it was okay. Or maybe they'll smile and say, it was good. It's great. Yeah, I had a good day. Yeah, what was so good about it? What was the good part? And then that's where you'll see their eyes sort of glaze over, like looking for something to say. But most people aren't having a great life. They're having an okay life. And what's the predictable, almost certain outcome of that, the fate of that, is that you'll probably keep on having a good life. Unless you don't, but you won't have anything to say about it. It'll just happen to you. It'll just be like whatever happens, that'll happen. And so I call that being on the effects side of life. And in a cause and effect universe, I'd rather be on the cause side of it. They say in Texas, it just depends on which side of the saddle you want to be on. Do you want to be ridden or you want to be the rider? Do you want to be which side of the saddle do you want to be on? I want to be on the cause side of the saddle. I want to be deciding which way this horse is going. I want to say how fast and how slow and how hard and how soft that my life is going to be. So I'm recommending that to you, and I'm recommending that you find out about how to do that reliably and consistently for yourself. And this is the courses that we teach at Embrace Growth, the seminars, the workshops, books, CDs, DVDs. They're all about putting you in the driver's seat of your life. Empowering you. We don't have rules and tips and techniques and a code of rules to live by. We do have some recommendations about what works and doesn't work. And I will say that when we in our organization, we have about 100 assistants around the world, and 12 or 15 different countries. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're watching this show and you happen to be on one of our assistance teams, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think I'm underestimating and conservatively estimating that we have about 100 assistants in 15 different countries that are pretty much in contact with each other 24 hours a day, all by their own motivation. And in order for that to work, in order for that to maintain itself and not just become a lot of chaos, there's some rules of ethics and integrity that we ask people to abide by, and they don't have to. They can live. We don't tell people how they have to live. We just say that if you want to be on this team, these are sort of the rules and that we work by, so that we can have a working organization. And then if people don't want to live by those rules, that's fine. They can't be on that team. And so some people even find that as ruthless. They find that as being very tough. What do you mean I have to live this certain way and operate in this certain thing in order to be on the team? Yeah, that's what it takes. That's what it takes to be on the team. If you were on a football team, you'd have to show up for practice and wear a football jersey and work out. Otherwise, you just can't be on the team. I'm sort of derivating off of the path of what I wanted to say. What I really wanted to say was about integrity and ruthless compassion and the difference between private life and public life, okay? Because in our private life, our attachments and personal relationships can give rise to doubts about the value of being impartial and having integrity and being detached and independent, okay? Personal integrity is almost impossible to have inside of private or personal relationships. However, in public life, if you choose to be somebody who publicly stands up and says, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm dedicated to, this is what I'm causing in the world, this is what I'm inviting you to participate in, this is how I'm going to do it, and this is how much it cost, right? If you're going to be a public person and take a stand like that, you're going to find out that there's a huge gap between what you feel personally in terms of your attachment and your relationships and your preferences and your likes and dislikes, and doing what must be done to get the job done. Okay, you're going to find that there's a gap between your personal life and your public life, and this gap is almost unfathomable, unimaginable to people who live a private life and don't have a public life. And then you'll find that there are many public people who have a diminished private life. In other words, their private life is suffering, for lack of a better word, because their whole life is so public. And so when you want to have a balance between your public life and your private life, you will find that there will be a big gap between what you think and feel, and your feelings, if you will, and your commitments, your declared commitments out in the world. Okay? And so when it comes down to it, there's a question that comes up when you step up to this gulf or this gap in your life. And it is simply this. When it comes to your feelings or your commitments, what will you serve? What will you serve? You will have to be at the service of one or the other sometimes. And this is why I've brought up the conversation about ruthless compassion. If your commitments are to what is going to serve the greatest good, what will serve nobility and honor and the goodness, the greatness of humanity, if you want to be of service to that, sometimes your personal life will pull you in a separate direction. And when that happens, you have to make a choice, and the choice I've always had to make, and each person has to make for themselves, is what will I serve? Will I serve my feelings, which aren't always comfortable, or will I serve my commitments, which always confirm for me that I'm doing the right thing? If my commitments to my public commitments ever tell me that I'm doing the wrong thing, then I'll be listening to that as well. But for now, it seems that the commitments that we're making at Embrace Growth are about creating communities of wisdom and contribution, truth, honesty, and integrity that leave a legacy of love for future generations. That's what we're committed to. That's what we're up to. That's what you can count on. And I found that what we practice, we become. What we practice and we do consistently over and over. You know, they say that anything that you do 10,000 times, you become an expert at. Now, some people say a master at. That's not true. Okay, they have many people collapse or confuse the distinction expert with master. Now, an expert's somebody who can pretty reliably do something pretty much all the time. A master is somebody that around them you get the teachings and you're not even sure why. Things happen around a master that don't happen around an expert. And one way that you can tell who a master is that around them there are other masters and there are other experts learning from them. So many people came to martial arts for one reason, but they stayed for another reason. Many people come into acting because they want to be loved, they want to be liked, they think that they'll be famous and rich, and so that's their greatest motivation. So they come into acting. I'm not saying all actors or all martial artists do that, but many people, I'm saying, do come into a discipline for an outer reason. In other words, a reason that is outwardly motivated. But in order to master the art, in order to actually come to terms with the art, you have to have a very powerful relationship with what's motivating you. And if what's motivating you is an outward stimulation, if what's motivating you is an outward motivation coming in from the outside, then you will always be dependent upon other people's admiration, respect, belonging to something outside yourself. But if it is for your own self-growth and motivation, if you are your self-actualization, if it's a natural self-expression of yourself to be an actor, to be a martial artist, to be a dancer, then there is an infinite amount of growth and development available, you see. So much of my work was designed to have people shift their focus. For example, in my dance studio, there were no mirrors. Now, all dance studios all over the world have mirrors just about, okay? Because people want to see what they look like when they're dancing, you know? They want to make sure that their head is tilted just so, or that the shoulder is back, or whatever it is, right? They're looking at the outside of what dance looks like. But I was teaching people to dance. I was teaching people to find that thing within them that needed to move, that needed to express, that wanted to express, that found itself through movement. And there is such a language. It's the language of movement. And this is what true dance is. Real dance, you know, real primitive dance, they don't have mirrors to see if they're doing it right. Right? They're looking inside to make sure that it feels right, that it is right, that it's an expression of how they feel. And then it either looks right or it doesn't, you see. So in my studio, there were no mirrors. There were no outward reflection. You know, you found your reflection from the inside, you know, and the teacher would tell you, no, yes, no, higher, this, that, until you got it. And then you would know that's it. That's it. I got it. Because you get it from the inside. You can't learn to ride a bicycle looking in a mirror. You know, you can't check to see if, you know, your balance is right. You have to have your balance right on the inside. That's an internal sensation that once you have it, you don't lose it, right? Once you learn to ride a bicycle, you could not ride a bicycle for 20 years. You go back, you can still ride the bicycle. It's a distinction, you see. And so the work that we do at Embrace Growth is all about that. We're not trying to give you tips and techniques that you apply and paste onto your life, cut and paste this idea or tip or technique that, Dr. Sion or Mr. Morgan said or gave us, or that I learned at an Embrace Growth workshop. They said da 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 da. We're not interested in that. In fact, while we allow people to take notes and encourage them to take notes in our workshop, it's really, a distraction. For the most part, it's a distraction. There are things that I say, you should write this down. And there are other things that I want people to experience directly in their own experience, because what you hear, you tend to forget. What you see, you tend to remember. But what you do, you own it. You tend not to forget. You tend to remember. Okay? All right. Well, that's the end of our show. Thank you very much for watching. You've been watching Love Talk. You can find out all about Embrace Growth and me online at Trainer749 on YouTube or at embracegrowth.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here again next week on Love Talk.